Welcome to Delos Crossing. Something horrible happened back here in 2005, and we're about to find out what actually occurred in this cold and distant place in Alaska. Telling a touching story in video games has luckily become more ingrained in the video game industry. DontNod Entertainment has been one of the best developers consistently bringing interesting storytelling to the interactive world of entertainment. And to spoil this review somewhat in advance, Tell Me Why is no different. Besides telling an interesting story of a torn apart family and the death of a young mother in a small and close community, DontNod have been able to tell real stories by real characters who aren't defined by only one aspect of their character or history. The nuance that has been brought to the table in Tell Me Why is commendable. This is the Xbox Era review for Tell Me Why. While DontNod certainly have been able to tell a good story with Tell Me Why, it hasn't been able to remove the video game annoyances often found in story-focused projects, but more on that later. Tell Me Why is about a brother and a sister in a small village in Alaska. The winters are cold and harsh, and the town is often reliant on aeroplanes passing by with supplies, and there isn't much to do. But one night something happens which will be talked about for a long time in this close community. We're back in 2005. Tyler and Alison Ronan live with their mother, Mary Ann, in a small cottage by the lake. Tyler and Alison are twins and don't have any other friends besides each other and the stories that they've been creating together with their mother. Escapism is a large part of this story, both in relation to the adults and the children. One night changes everything for the Ronan family as Mary Ann is stabbed and falls in an almost frozen lake, which ultimately leads to the separation of the twins. The player enters the story when Alison gets to pick Tyler up from Fireweed, a home for troubled youths where Tyler has lived for the last decade. This is the starting point of our journey, though you'll be witnessing flashbacks from the past many times during this 9 or so hour interactive piece of entertainment. This is the moment we'll learn about the town, Delos Crossing, and the reason or reasons for the death of Mary Ann Ronan. This is a typical DontNod experience with dialogue options which will impact your relationship with either Tyler or Alison. Meanwhile, the choices you make will have an effect on the people around you as well. Truth be told, during the playthrough of Tell Me Why, I never had the feeling that my choices really mattered. Sure, they impacted the relationships between characters in the small town of Delos Crossing, but it didn't feel like it impacted the overall storyline all that much. The writing is decent enough, it didn't feel corny or shallow, though it sometimes lacked impact. The night of the incident was repeated so many times during the 9-hour experience with the game that at one point it gave a get on with it type vibe. Overall though, the story itself was great. It was easy enough to empathise with the main characters, their actions made sense throughout the storyline, and the way the two characters in their 20s are reliving a world they remember from when they were children makes for an interesting perspective. If you are into DontNod games like Life is Strange, you'll really appreciate what they've done here. What I found most commendable about Tell Me Why is how they've been able to tell a story with a transgender protagonist without making it about solely or even largely that subject. The way DontNod and Microsoft, with the help of Xbox Research, GLAAD, who specialise in script writing for LGBTQ characters, Checkpoint, who provide mental health support for gamers, and the Hoona Heritage Foundation, who've helped with a realistic portrayal of Alaskan cultures such as Tlingit, have been able to create a story with great representation without focusing on any of those specific topics, should be applauded. Tyler is portrayed as a character with multiple layers and motives. Being a transgender character is only one of the many aspects of his life and identity. Story-wise, Tell Me Why will keep you engaged. The characters in the game are well developed and serve a purpose in the overall story, while still feeling like a natural fit in the world that has been built by DontNod. The biggest gripe with the overall story is the fact it ambles along a little too slowly at some points. When playing, there are moments where I was doing all kinds of busy work, for example getting an ID from the living room and some payment documentation from the bedroom to put into a file in the kitchen, for no purpose at all regarding the actual story. Things like that feel like the developers wanted to build a 10-hour plus game but ran out of content in the process. It's part of those gameplay annoyances we spoke about earlier. At these moments you're reminded you're playing a game and not watching a movie, and while it's great players have been able to enjoy stories like these whilst giving the player control, it also creates issues regarding pacing. These moment-to-moment pieces of gameplay never rise above your typical walking simulator moments, except when it comes to the puzzles. The puzzles in Tell Me Why are really well done, though on occasion a little too easy at times. They are refreshing pieces of gameplay between all the narrative and walking simulator styles. They fit into the story really well, and no puzzle is ever the same. The way the developers have been able to mix these with the story has given the game a really unique feel. DontNod have created a fantasy world within the real world, and the puzzles in this game all maneuver between these two perspectives. The most important gameplay and story element of Tell Me Why is that of bonds and shared memories. Tyler and Alaskan can speak to each other via some kind of telepathy. There seems to be a bond between the two twins, which gives them this superpower of sorts. A DontNod classic, it seems. It does offer some interesting dialogue options when speaking to other people within the game. Tyler and Alaskan can decide together what their strategy is when in a conversation with someone else, which leads to more diverse dialogue. This means you won't always have the standard evaluation of conversations, it just happens on the fly. More important for the story, and in my opinion the more interesting power the twins have, is the idea of shared memories. Tyler and Alaskan can relive memories together whenever they feel emotional or nostalgic. This is how they solve large parts of the mysteries in Delos Crossing. While this game is by no means a technical showcase, it does a good job in not breaking the immersion too much. Sure, at some points you'll have a coat flapping around while there's no wind, but it doesn't happen often enough that it becomes annoying. DontNod could improve on the hair tech a bit, as I feel that's what's holding the game back in regards to immersion visually. Most of all, the way the developers have been able to depict Alaska is stunning. From whales jumping out of the water to amazing views and vistas, it's a true homage to Alaskan heritage. The buildings, the artwork and everything you see in the world feel like they belong in that place. Even though I've been reviewing this game in the middle of summer, I felt like I was in snowy Alaska at times. Before we come to our conclusion in this review, I'd like to give a shout out to the music and audio design in this game. While the developers have overused the main score of the game a little too much, other music in the game is adding a lot to the atmosphere. Tell Me Why lives and dies by the story it's trying to tell. If you're not grabbed by that story, the chances are you won't enjoy the game very much. Sure, the puzzles and the walking simulator style gameplay will keep you entertained if you're already into that genre, but this is a DontNod game at its core. Fans of games like Life is Strange will have a new adventure to enjoy and truly lose themselves in. The way DontNod has dealt with certain topics within this game can only be appreciated and gives us hope for more developers to take these next steps in creating fully fledged LGBTQ characters, with the main lesson being, a character is more than their sexuality or their gender. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that little subscribe button, ring the notification bell so you can be alerted when we drop more content, and we'll see you next time.